absolutely spectacular for everything else. Instead of throwing it in the trash, they pitched it as a toy. It was sold to Wham-O, the same company that made the hula hoop. Silly String launched in 1972 and sold out almost immediately. The US military later started using Silly String in Iraq. Soldiers would spray it into doorways before entering a room. If the string floated, the room was clear. If it dropped suddenly and stuck to something invisible, there was a tripwire connected to a bomb. A children's party toy became a tool for detecting explosives. Leonard Fish never fixed a single broken bone, but he accidentally made something that saved lives in ways he never imagined. Number 6. The sweet taste of miscommunication. In 1976, a researcher named Shashikant Phadnis was working in a lab in London. His supervisor told him to test a new chemical compound they were working on. Phadnis misheard taste, so he put an untested laboratory chemical directly into his mouth, which is the kind of thing that gets you fired, or killed, or both. But instead of dying, he noticed it was incredibly sweet, like sweeter than anything he'd ever tasted. The compound, it turned out, was sucralose, which you now know as Splenda. Sucralose is made by taking regular sugar and swapping out 3 of its hydrogen-oxygen groups with chlorine atoms. Chlorine, the stuff in swimming pools, the stuff used in chemical weapons in World War I, but because of how the molecule is structured, your body doesn't absorb it, it just passes straight through, so you get all the sweetness with 0 calories. Sucralose is about 600 times sweeter than regular sugar, and the global artificial sweetener market is now worth over $2 billion a year, built entirely on a lab safety violation. Number 5. The forgotten basement sauce. 2 chemists named Leah and Perrins were hired to recreate a fancy sauce recipe in 1835. A British nobleman had brought the recipe back from India and wanted them to bottle it, so they mixed everything together: anchovies, vinegar, tamarind, molasses, and a bunch of other things. They tasted it. It was absolutely disgusting, like offensively bad. So they did what any reasonable person would do. They shoved the jars into a dark basement and completely forgot about them for 2 full years. When they finally remembered the jars existed, they went down to throw them out. They opened one up, expecting to find something that belonged in a crime scene. Instead, it smelled incredible. They tasted it. Turns out, all those ingredients had been slowly fermenting together in the dark. The anchovies had dissolved into this deep, rich, savory liquid. The whole thing transformed from rotting garbage into a premium condiment. They started selling it immediately, and to this day, Worcestershire sauce is still made using the same accidental fermentation process. Number 4. The immortality bomb. So there were these ancient Chinese alchemists. Their whole job was to find the secret to living forever. The dream was to just mix some stuff together and live forever. They were combining sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter. Saltpeter is a white powder that forms on old walls, the kind of stuff you'd have to be pretty desperate to put in your mouth, and they were desperate. One day, someone mixed all 3 together and heated it up. The mixture exploded violently in their faces, so the quest to live forever accidentally created the thing that has ended more lives than almost anything else in human history. The Chinese didn't immediately think weapon, they thought fireworks. For 200 years, gunpowder was mostly used to make pretty lights in the sky, but eventually someone figured out you could pack it into a tube and launch things at people. And once that idea got out, it spread everywhere. Castles became useless almost overnight. Knights in heavy armor, who had trained their whole lives to be unstoppable, suddenly weren't. All because some guy in ancient China really didn't want to die. Number 3. The friendly shrapnel. World War II pilots had a really bad day every time their cockpit windshield shattered. Razor-sharp plastic shards would fly straight into their eyes at full speed. A British eye surgeon named Harold Ridley was treating these pilots after the war. He expected to find their eyes in full revolt against the plastic fragments. Your body is usually pretty aggressive about kicking out foreign objects. It swells, it fights, it rejects, but the plastic just sat there, completely unbothered. The pilot's eyes had basically adopted the shrapnel. Ridley had a thought that most people would consider insane. He wanted to put plastic inside eyes on purpose. He designed a tiny plastic lens and implanted it into a patient's eye in 1949. They called him reckless. One colleague reportedly said it was the worst idea he had ever heard. That colleague was wrong. Today, over 10 million of these lens implants are performed every year. It's the most common surgery on the planet. People walk in with cataracts, which are cloudy lenses that steal vision, and they walk out seeing better than they have in decades. Number 2. The sludge that beats steel. So there's a chemist named Stephanie Kwolek working at DuPont in 1965. Her job is to find a new lightweight fiber, something strong enough to replace steel in car tires. She mixes up a batch of chemicals and looks down at what she made. It's cloudy, it's watery, it looks like something you'd pour down the sink. The machine they use to spin fibers into threads requires a clear, thick liquid to work properly. This stuff was the opposite. Her lab technician refused to even put it in the machine. He thought it would break something. Stephanie had to talk him into it. She basically said, "Just try it." The cloudy, watery, terrible-looking failure spun into a fiber that was 5 times stronger than steel. Same weight, 5 times stronger. Today, Kevlar is in bulletproof vests worn by police officers and soldiers all over the world. It's in cut-resistant gloves, helmets, and aircraft panels. It's estimated that Kevlar has saved over 3,000 police officers' lives in the US alone. Number 1. The skincare weapon. So there's a doctor in the 1980s trying to help people whose eyes wouldn't stop twitching. Imagine your eye just spasming all day. The treatment he came up with was to inject a poison directly into the eye muscles, specifically botulinum toxin, which is one of the most lethal substances on the planet. A single gram could theoretically kill over 1 million people. The logic was sound, though. The poison paralyzes muscles. The eye won't stop moving, so you paralyze the eye. Problem solved. And it worked. The twitching stopped. But then the doctor noticed something else. The deep wrinkles around the injection site were just gone, completely smoothed out. The deadliest toxin known to science was accidentally moonlighting as a skincare product. Nobody planned this. Nobody sat down and thought, you know what would make a great anti-aging cream? A mass casualty agent. Today, Botox is a $4 billion industry. Millions of people voluntarily pay to have this injected into their foreheads. The difference between Botox and a bioweapon is essentially the decimal point on the syringe. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.
I scream, you scream, we should all be screaming because Big Ice Cream has been slowly churning away at their product's quality, and soon there may not be any ice cream left in the frozen aisle for us to scream about. And today, we're diving into this chunky monkey conspiracy. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show that's cool, creamy, and the metaphor fell apart. I'm not gonna keep going with that. But speaking of cream, here's a confession. I don't like ice cream. I don't. It's too cold. It melts too easily. You get sticky. I don't like sweets in general. But I am eagle-eyed and have a disdain for disjustice. The other day, I was clearing out our freezer, and it's important that I mention in this point in the story that Claudia is a hoarder. So I came across her 24 half-finished ice cream pints that she can't bring herself to throw away, even though she knows she's over it, and they'll just be taking up space for months. But I noticed something on the bottom of her Breyers Vanilla, where it's supposed to say, you know, ice cream. It said frozen dairy dessert. Weird. That sounds like something the McDonald's CEO would call the McFlurry.
I love this product.
But that was the extra creamy vanilla. I meant to grab the regular homemade vanilla, which sure enough does say ice cream on the bottom. Now, you're probably thinking the same thing I did at the moment. Why are some frozen dairy desserts and others ice cream? I thought all ice cream was ice cream. Clearly, I had no choice but to get to the bottom of this ice cream conundrum. And oh boy, did I find something delicious, loyal theorists. And I'm not talking about the ice cream, obviously. Because, yeah, ice cream, it's changed. And Big Cream, ew, didn't think we'd notice, but I did. So join me as I explain how the Breyers and Dryers of the world have massacred my boy. Figure out how they've been able to get away with it, and in the end, put my distaste aside and my refined palate to the ultimate test to show you how to spot the fakes in the ice cream conspiracy. But before we can figure out how the big boys butchered ice cream, we first need the scoop on what ice cream even is in the first place. In the past, I've been guilty of just assuming that ice cream is just cream that's been iced. But the truth is way more complicated and fascinating. In general, ice cream is made of 3 main ingredients. Cream, obviously, as well as milk and sugar. This milky, creamy mix is heated up to kill bacteria, then it gets blasted with high-pressure air to break down any fat globules and ensure that the entire mix is homogeneous. Finally, the mix is cooled. But here's the kicker. As it's cooled, rotating blades churn the mixture, adding air and giving ice cream that iconic texture. No churning means no ice cream. So you might say, oh, is that the reason for the frozen dairy dessert label on some of these tubs of ice cream? Not enough churning. As it turns out, though, it's actually the opposite. You see, these frozen dairy desserts are made the exact same way as regular